Microphone.
Oh. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Show. Very excited to be with you. Got an interesting topic for you today. It has to do with the upcoming summit of BRICS. That's going to be between October 22nd and October 24th. I must tell you, I wish I would have attended that one. I would be overseas, but it would have been nice to visit. How are you?
I am doing great. You want to hear kind of like a fun life thing?
Sure.
So my husband and I, my husband is actually, he's a big Harry Potter fan. And I'm also kind of I'm a bigger Lord of the Rings fan though. I see you, Matt, right there. But we did an entire Harry Potter themed, like floating candles. So we have the floating candles and we have the clouds.
Wow.
If you're interested in seeing it, I will post a video of it in the community tab. So check it out. If you guys are interested, let me know if you want to see it.
That would be great. Yeah, you guys would be interested in seeing something like that.
It's cool. You know what?
I don't know much about Harry Potter, whatever the heck his name is.
You don't know Lord of the Rings either. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
My brain sometimes doesn't operate in this kind of thing. But it would be worth watching maybe. One day. I'll get into it. So anyway, by the way, someone put a comment saying, I haven't seen you guys together for a long time. Yeah, well, thank you. You know, we've been traveling and been out of town
life stuff,
so forth. So, as you guys know, I do speaking engagements. So sometimes you'll be forced to head out elsewhere and do what you need to do. That's just part of life. So anyway, we're here. We're excited, and I'll do this one here because next week I won't be here.
You will not. Yeah. And you guys, David's going to have some very cool surprises for where he is.
Yeah. So
also, Alex Chernovsky, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Nice
Thank you for becoming a member.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Alex. Cool. Good to see you. All right, let's get into our topic. And by the way, guys, just prepare some questions for the end. We're gonna address some of this. So the upcoming summit of BRICS. Well, of course, we're not going to be talking about the BRICS members and all that. You all know this information by now. You all know what BRICS stands for. You know, sad to say that even some of us here in the US do not even know what a BRICS stands for.
You know what's interesting about BRICS? What I remember being in college, and my degree is in global business. So I remember being in college and learning about BRICS, but the BRICS countries were kind of just this thing that wasn't really very important. But over the last couple of years, BRICS has become very relevant. Over the last 5 years, really, BRICS has become very, very, very relevant. And I think that that's happened in very large part to China's economy. And another thing that I would like to add to this episode is President Xi coming out and doing the stimulus, the large stimulus that just happened towards the banks.
Oh, that's not the one that has to do with the Africa, the 50
No,
billion?
no, this isn't Africa.
Separate.
President Xi Jinping came out yesterday let me make sure that I can pronounce this name correctly. But basically he came out and said and pledged somewhere around I'll go through the steps because there's a bunch of different pieces to this, but basically he pledged approximately 1,000 renminbi yuan. So I think that's something like 142 billion US dollars into the central banks in China. So what's happening is, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's very major.
It is and it isn't. So China did a similar thing in 2008 because there's a lovely crash worldwide. I don't know if anyone noticed or not, you know. But there was a lovely crash. And so China actually injected let me make sure that I have this figure correct, but I believe they injected somewhere around 4 trillion yuan. So it was more than is being injected right now. But what's happening is that Xi Jinping and there's a second thing happening in the Chinese financial system. The second thing is that China appears to be giving actual handouts of money to their population, particularly before National Day. So National Day is a holiday. It's a big holiday.
In October.
And it's very interesting timing on their part, because as people are about to gather with their families, as people are about to talk about the economy and how happy they are or unhappy they are about what's happening, there's no doubt that what's happening in China's economy right now is challenging. China really does have very big challenges with their real estate, and Chinese real estate, super interesting fact, but Chinese real estate is the biggest asset class in the world of anything.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Because China has so much of it.
Yeah.
But with real estate prices falling and falling and falling and falling, it's a very big issue for China in terms of stability.
Yeah. Well, that was the reason why I said it's very interesting, because we all know it's a fact, guys. There is no other way of saying it. We all know that the economy inside China, the consumption is slowing down. So that slowdown, it's kind of, it's felt around the world. And to me, to highlight to you the importance of the Chinese market. A lot of people do not want to, even like I came across now that the profits for Mercedes dropped from 11% to 7% because there is no purchase of the vehicles inside China. That shows you right there where things are.
Well, absolutely. But on the flip side, China is also getting less and less popular among consumers in other markets. And so that's so anyway, sorry, my husband's here and he's very handsome and I'm very in love with him. And so he's kind of distracting. Anyway, so what were you saying?
You're saying that the Chinese, there's less popular. I forgot.
We're about to be married for 1 year, and it's definitely like honeymoon phase. I'm very in love with my husband. He's great. Good.
That's the whole reason for why he wants to get married. I'm assuming
that's that's a good point. But so the Chinese are actually also struggling to find buyers for their merchandise around their goods around the world. So there's some very interesting issues that China's facing, but I really think that it's because of their growth. China has grown so much in the last 30 years and then in the last 10 years that now, and they've raised an enormous amount of people, many millions of people out of poverty, and they've raised their economy to be the second largest in the world and the first in the world by purchasing power parity. So they are in a very interesting and I feel transitionary time. This is kind of a critical time, I think, for China because, sentiment in the United States is very, very anti-China.
Of course.
And for various reasons. And I actually blame the US government for allowing the amount of control and influence that China has. I actually blame the United States government for that because the US government wanted that foreign investment. So what did they do? They sold us out. They sold our land out. Large corporations wanted cheap labor. So they sold the American manufacturer out. So I blame the US government for that. But China's in a very interesting transitionary place. And I think that this injection is smaller than it probably needs to be, but it is a concerted effort to try and stabilize China's economy and try and push that growth further. So this was President Xi Jinping actually said this at the I hope I pronounced this correctly, but it's Politburo meeting. Politburo. It's just a weirdly it's like weirdly written. But he said that basically they're trying to face up to difficulties, which is very interesting. He said, face up to difficulties, strengthen confidence, and effectively enhance the sense of responsibility and urgency to do a good job in economic work. They're looking at homes, stabilizing the real estate market. They're also looking at improving the job situation that they're currently facing. So they actually are tackling some of the big issues issues that they have. So
Yeah.
I will say I do respect that about this, but this is a much smaller injection of money than has been in the past. So I assume this isn't the last phase of this, especially with the BRICS Summit coming up, especially with, you know, Enbridge and really trying to get everybody on a platform that is different than SWIFT. They have to fix some of their own economic problems before I think that that's going to be something everyone else is interested in getting
but
on.
At least China has some other options at its disposal, I believe. You know, for example, the idea of not them finding markets, they might not find markets here in the US, but there are other alternatives. When you look at just in Asia itself, the large, you know, where is the highest percentage of the global economy is located.
Well, and the thing is, though, even if the US, so for example, EVs is like a huge hot topic everywhere right now. But, you know, Chinese EVs, 100%, you know, freaking tariff. And that's not a viable, it's not a viable option here in the US, right? So even though that's still the case, the US and China are so intertwined that I don't believe it's in either's best interest to even really like go and look for another market. The US is still a phenomenal market for China. It's just not a fully open market for China.
Well, that's why China's going to look, is already looking for alternatives. And I can tell you 2 examples, Cambodia and Vietnam.
Yeah, but Cambodia and Vietnam don't pale in comparison to the U.S. economy.
Of course, no, we know that for a fact. It's just the idea that the option is already there. And when you consider now what is going to be announced during the BRICS Summit, that's going to be the major. This is where, that's the whole reason for why we wanted to do this one here, guys, for you. It's just to highlight to you the importance of what lies ahead, but also that gives me some sort of reminds me of the legislation that Congress passed, the 1.2 I think billion for propaganda against China. You know, they passed legislation for that, which to me was 1.6 billion to be exact. So that tells me right there is something going on with that.
I really wish our government was honest about things.
No, they can't.
It's just not. You're
using a key word there.
I know.
Honest doesn't exist when it comes down to Washington or the whole West for that matter. It's because this is one of the ideas of one of the concerns now that it became now more prevalent is the fact that no official is honest enough to state things as they are or do the right thing.
Well, because if they do, they're actively punished, and they're actively punished by people not voting them, like people freaking out, voting them out of office.
Then that becomes the priority is the political career, not serving
absolutely
people. Well,
and that's what we see. That's what we see.
That's to me is wrong. So let's go back to our BRICS conversation here because it's very, very, very important. And there is one thing, at least the reading that I've done and so forth, there is one major announcement is going to be, and it has to do with this de-dollarization process. Now, there are those who are saying, well, they're coming up with their own currency. No, they're not. You know, at least based on what I read, you never know what's going to be surprising with that. So the thing is that the sort of the questions have been raised as to whether BRICS de-dollarization strategy will be a provision for cryptocurrency which other countries can use. Right. So we don't know.
Enbridge is built on the blockchain. So that's, and blockchain is not crypto. Okay. It's not the same thing. But like Bitcoin is blockchain. Right? It's blockchain technology, but blockchain is actually being used for a bunch of other things right now, but it is a blockchain based platform. So it is. And so this is my understanding of it. I don't know if this is going to be true or not, but apparently this came from Ritesh Jain, founder of Pine Tree Macro. So I don't know how accurate or not this is. But apparently it's supposed to include 40% gold and 60% participating BRICS currencies to be converted into gold or convertible into gold, which is a very interesting thing because that's part of what, I mean, that's more or less what Bretton Woods set in motion with the US
back then. Yeah.
back in 1944.
Yeah, that's true.
Is to have a gold-backed currency.
So that means gold's going to play a role into all this.
I think it has to.
And it is. I have something here I'll share with you guys. But before I'll do this, I'm going to share a link with you for a great article. I'm going to post it for you. It was written by Godfrey Benjamin, and it was edited by Alex Morrison. If you get a chance, guys, to read it. So I'm going to put it here in the chat box for you. That's from the Crypto News. Just very, very insightful. And usually, you know me, I don't recommend stuff. But when something is worth reading because of the knowledge in it, it's so we'll share it with you. So the idea that like we mentioned, the BRICS Summit will be about a month from now. It's on 22nd to 24, not a month, what, 3 weeks? Something like that, somewhere around that. But anyway, so here is the key question to, in my opinion, what is going to be unveiled into this, it has to do with this cryptocurrency. So, and again, well, I am not qualified in financial stuff, whatever. All I'm telling you is the idea of what does it mean when it comes down to understanding geopolitics, because this part of the economy will have a major influence one way or another. So the crypto currency aspect of it among BRICS will be amplified to be known at the summit. That is the point. And this is why it's going to become the idea of what might be the highlight of the upcoming summit. Well, the highlight of the upcoming summit is going to be the expectations as to what BRICS is going to do regarding the de-dollarization. Because here's how it works. If you recall, at the last summit in South Africa, what did BRICS say? They said that we're going to start working on some financial instrument. They didn't say what it was because they didn't know at that time. It was just the idea. So my point is, in a major summit, that's where those major announcements is going to be made. And when you add one aspect to this, and that aspect is that there are 54 countries going to be attending. That tells the story.
And the big players, like more or less, and the inclusion of the African Union, the inclusion of these big oil producing countries that want to join BRICS.
It's because the same thing that happens back in 2023 summit in South Africa. And I was following that one. It was during that time when they announced about the 5 new members. It was announced in it wasn't officially, it was still the beginning of the year when they officially became, but Argentina, of course, they withdrew from that one. But that's beside the point. The idea is that 54 countries going to be attending. That tells me where things are. And when you consider where the GDP of the EU in comparison to BRICS.
Absolutely. It's not even.
Exactly. But that's the point of why the financial statements that they're going to make, whatever that might be, is going to be very, very crucial. And the question we need to ask with that is, how is that going to impact the global financial system?
Well, so it's actually very interesting because the de-dollarization process is already happening. It's not done. You know what I mean? It's not done. And, you know, the renminbi yuan is definitely still like 6% of all global transactions, right? So that it's not like de-dollarization is a fait accompli, but
no, not yet.
Not yet. But this is just step after step after step after step. And, you know, the United States, the Western nations are struggling financially. And, you know, I had this conversation with a friend after, you know, like a friend's dinner about, you know, where countries are at. And he was talking about Germany. And he was like, oh, Germany is better than, you know, XYZ, whatever, because its GDP is higher than whatever. And I was like, look, although that's true, Germany is on a downward financial trend right now. That's the problem. And it's starting to be prolonged because I remember many moons ago, not that many, when Janet Yellen was like, inflation is transitory. Okay. Well, I can tell you by going to the grocery store, it's not. So as we have more and more prolonged financial problems, in the West. But the thing is, China also has its own financial problems, and China is the economic behemoth of the BRICS. And so I'm very curious to see how much more stimulus is actually going to go into their economy, because I really don't think that this last trillion is going to be it. But at the same meeting, China actually vowed to keep their 5% growth target. They have, I mean, I don't know whether they're going to, because at first they were like trying their best to achieve it. But now they're like, no, we're going to achieve this 5% growth target. Not a 5% growth target. It's huge. Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but it is.
In comparison to what they used to have.
But they had farther to come.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? China is the second largest economy in the world right now. A large portion of their population is in a middle class. And the health of any nation really is based on how much of your population is in a middle class, because the middle class is, number one, a working class. So it's not the working class, right? But it is a class of people who are working. And these are people who can take care of their expenses. These are people who can pay into a tax system. These are the people that are basically elevating whatever country you have is the middle class. And it's why it's such a big problem that the United States has such a small middle class right now and such a large poverty class. Because when you're poor, what can you contribute to the government?
You got nothing.
What can you contribute to taxes, for example? What can you contribute to the economy? What can you contribute to charity? You know what I mean? You can't contribute very much, because all you're worried about is survival, and you have so little. And then in the US, the top, it's not even 1%, it's the top like 0.1%. They don't pay taxes really because of the way the tax laws are written,
which is manipulating
absolutely
the masses,
manipulating the masses. But that's where we have the problem, is the middle class is really who contributes the most in terms of work and then taxes to any economy.
Well, a lot of people do not know the reality of the middle class in the US. The middle class is the one that is sustaining the American economy. It's not the top one and the bottom. The bottom one don't have any. So you kind of be compassionate with them in the sense of,
absolutely,
they don't have them. I got no problem with that for those who do not have money to pay for taxes. What do you do? But for the upper one, which becomes problematic, because if you look at, for those who are from the US, if you are from the US, you know what I'm talking about. When you look at your tax
and Canada too.
Canada is worse, but again, who gives a damn about Canada, right? I'll say
probably the people who live there.
Straightforward, Canadians are wonderful people and so forth, but the damn government,
it's government. It's always government.
When you screw up people in the name of the government, why should I respect you? You're done for. So the idea of, if you happen to be an American watching this, that is the middle class in the US that is paying the big portion of the taxes, between 28 and 35%. And that tells me even the middle class in the US is shrinking.
Absolutely. And that's it's been shrinking. It's been shrinking, and now it's sort of like a critical point,
very, very
because the larger the poverty class and I think the biggest issue in the United States is actually the gap between the wealthy and the poorest, because the gap is shocking. The gap is staggering.
And by the way, all that was done by design. So
I agree with that. I completely agree with that.
So let's go back to this point here about the idea of why the financial aspects will be a major role regarding the announcement that BRICS is going to make. And that one has to do with the idea of the support that is going to be announced for the use of the local currencies in the trading. So when you consider 54 countries, because here is one thing, by the way, guys, I need to tell you, it is my opinion. And again, I am sure there are economists that are well qualified. That's their field. But to me, just common sense. It is my belief that this upcoming summit, ain't going to be about how many members we're going to have. It won't be about that. It's going to be about integration. How you're going to integrate the now, because they've been working on this financial system, because now it became clear. It became clear now, not just to the BRICS, but the rest of the world, that One way you can circumvent US sanctions is by embarking on a different financial system.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm saying
Absolutely.
this upcoming summit, it's going to be about integration more so than, of course, members is always there because we all know who just recently applied.
Who just recently applied?
Turkey.
Yeah.
Which
yeah,
we're gonna get into that.
That's like really funny.
We're gonna get into that because
right.
that's
like
a very, very. But just the idea of to finalize this particular aspect, the introduction of this multi-currency payment platform, that's gonna be the financial infrastructure on which. Even the expansion in BRICS is going to be including that. And most countries will be willing to trade in their own local currencies.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, guys. We still have a strong hold on the global financial system.
Absolutely.
Make no mistake on that.
And the US is not going down without a fight in that, right?
No.
And it's actually one of the platforms that former current candidate Trump is platforming on, is making.
When threatening other countries, that's going to punish them if they don't use the dollar.
Yeah,
that's not a
winning.
That's not
strategy.
And to me, it was like, what are you trying to bully other countries?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know where.
Yes.
I don't. It is, but where are those advisors? The so-called advisors.
Here's the thing, like the United States, and you know this better than anybody, David, because you were in the military. Like, you know this better. The United States has used that tactic across the globe.
Yeah.
And it's made enemies. And that's why a tactic like that doesn't work.
No, it won't.
Like, yes, be the strongest military power. Like, great. Keep being the strongest military power.
Yeah.
But use your power for good. Bring prosperity to other countries because you'll get far more in return than being the biggest bully on the block, right? Like somebody, I don't know who, because the US has been a bully longer than I've been alive. And so
that's true.
I don't.
It's not something to, it's kind of, it's our country, but it's still, when the government does wrong.
Well, the thing is, when you see the bully on the playground, even if you're a teacher, if you're another student or whatever, you say, hey, stop being a bully. We can integrate. And it's interesting that you're talking about integration, because for this payment platform, you don't need to be part of BRICS. This is just my guess. Okay. This is my opinion and my guess. But my guess is that you're not going to need to be part of BRICS to use it. My guess is that it is going to be available to other countries should they choose to use it as well.
Yeah. Well, this is why the idea of the gold comes into all this. That is why you're looking at other countries like China, Russia, and some others that are, amassing massive amount of gold. Is because whatever the announcement is going to be, I don't know what it is. And I don't claim to know because I don't know. Yeah. Whatever it will be, the one thing that is certain is that they can just have this currency, whatever it might be, backed with by nothing.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
For us, ours is backed by debt.
Yeah.
Because if BRICS does the same, then what's the point?
Right.
So what's left? You get something tangible like gold.
Right.
And if you look at the price of the gold in today's market, it's way up there.
Yeah.
So it was things coming. So the idea that the dollar will always be there.
Yeah.
But more and more you are seeing this moving forward. And this is why I believe it will be some major announcements during the summit. So
well, I think you're right. And I think China is preparing for this by doing what it's doing right now.
I think so.
And I think that it will, because there's a lot of talk about it right now. It's really over the last 2 years, especially, it's been really hot topic to talk about what BRICS is planning, what the BRICS countries are planning in terms of alternative payment system and then potentially alternative currency. And I think you're right. It has to be backed by gold because it can't be backed by the yuan, for example. That's not that.
And the Chinese do not want it.
Well, they can't have it whether they want it or not. People don't have, there's not enough transactions in the renminbi at this point to do that, right?
Yeah.
And so there's not enough demand for it. But China's doing an interesting thing. First of all, they're developing demand by going and building infrastructure in other countries. So we talked about Africa last time. Who is about to be a big client of China because all of a sudden they have more money? Africa.
Yeah.
If you build Africa up, because one of the biggest problems in Africa has been that the colonizing countries have gone in
The
and
West.
taken their natural resources and not allowed them to have their own gold mines, for example,
Yeah.
mineral mine. They haven't allowed the people to have their own stuff, right? And there's a whole bunch of other things that I'm not going to go into right now. But if you're interested in the American government, specifically the CIA's involvements in African countries' government,
it's now no secret. I mean,
go ahead and look that up.
Look at the way to understand this.
Yeah.
Look at the sanctions imposed by the UN Security Council. Well, who was leading that? It was the US. If you look at the countries, mainly were from Africa.
Yeah.
And if there is one thing, if you guys want to learn something, go listen to the late Robert Mugabe's speech at the UN prior to that. The guy, he hit the nail on the head, especially with NATO stuff. But we all know this is nothing new for you guys.
Yes.
Just for you to understand the dynamics of where things are headed. And when you see that changes on the geopolitical landscape, you're going to have to think about the economic outlook that is coinciding or is going parallel with that. The same thing we've always said about, for example, energy.
Absolutely.
Think about the world of energy.
Yeah.
You cannot disassociate geopolitics from energy or vice versa. Anytime you got issues with energy supplies or whatever, you see the geopolitical impact.
Yeah.
And look no further now that what's going on in Red Sea. This is why it behooves you to understand what's going on. And this is why you're going to be hearing, mark my word on this, between now and October 22nd. You're going to be hearing a lot of statements coming out of Western think tanks.
Yeah.
And I came across one. I'm going to share it with you. And I quote here.
So frustrating.
BRICS aim to challenge the potential and economic dominance of mainly Western developed nations. Critics say it struggles to accomplish much and is uniting authoritarian and corrupt governments that seek to silence opposition.
Those are a whole bunch of judgment calls.
Oh, yes. Well, the whole idea is manipulation.
That's
look
real
at just the words
language.
Look at the words that's been used into that. I mean, let's be honest about it. If we are to say about the idea of silencing, I'm thinking of a silencer.
I thought you said Cylon, from Battlestar Galactica.
But I thought of
also a good TV show in case anyone hasn't watched Battlestar Galactica and is into sci-fi.
So it's just the idea when they are saying the corrupt government. Well, let's talk about the Western corrupted governments. I mean, come on. So this is what I'm saying. My point is just for you guys to differentiate in the wording into how they are. And this is just the beginning of the statements you're going to be hearing, because they wanted to, those think tanks in the West wanted to make sure that, to sort of ensure that you understand that BRICS is irrelevant. Which to me,
BRICS is not irrelevant.
It's not true. Yeah.
Like you can like them or hate them, but they are not irrelevant.
It's changing. Yeah. I looked at the stats last time, and I think if I recall, I had a clip by the, I have a clip here, guys. I'm going to share it with you. Let me get it. And it was by
who?
By the Russian president.
Okay.
Hold on a second. I'm going to show you this one because it's very, very important to understand. And Putin talks with numbers.
Yeah,
facts. Whether you like him or not, that's beside the point.
And whether they're all accurate or not, because some of them are, questionable, but he still speaks in a very plain way.
Yeah. Here, guys, I'm going to start it here, but of course he speaks Russian, but there is the subtitles in English.
Okay.
So take a listen.
To the global economy already exceeds that of the so-called G7 and continues to grow. The trend is growing. It is not changing. Just for the interest of reference. To be honest, I look at these numbers with interest myself. The G7 in 1992. What did they represent? 45.5% of global GDP. And in 2022, already 30.5%. It was 45.5%. Now it is 30%. The forecast for 2028 is 27.9%. And what about the BRICS? The BRICS, excluding the new members of this organization, had a share of 16.7% of the world GDP in 1992. The G7 had 30.5% and the BRICS 16.5%. And in 2022, the G7 had 30.5% and the BRICS will have 31.4%. And the forecast for the year 2028 is 33.8%. And the contribution of the BRICS countries to the global economy already exceeds that of the so-called G7.
Yeah, that's
and
true. I
continues to
mean,
grow.
that's a
The
fact.
trend is growing. It is not changing.
Yeah.
Just
That just wanted to share with you guys this one here, and for you to have a better understanding of where things are.
Yeah.
So to those, they're gonna be saying, well, BRICS is relevant, whatever. I am not denying that BRICS needs to vet its new members. They can't just accept whomever.
Yeah.
They are already sort of. I've always said this.
Oh.
I've always said this
Dog.
about India.
Yeah.
And no offense to India, nothing against India. It's just my question has always been,
Mhm.
what is India contributing to BRICS? So
yeah. No, I agree. I agree.
Because I think the dog wants to go
I know
out.
he does want to go out. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna let him out.
Okay. David is gonna
Excuse me,
let my other dog Thunder out. But yeah, I think David, that's a very, very good point, because BRICS, the United States, for example, basically has the US as the largest economy,
Yeah.
and then we have Europe, which is a much, much, much smaller economy, and Canada, which is a much smaller economy. So if you look at sort of the Western countries, there's the US, and then there's a couple of middle countries, right? You have Japan, you have the EU, which is, the countries in the EU vary in terms of GDP and size. And then you have Canada. And that's kind of it in the Western world. The US is kind of the behemoth in that situation, with the others contributing to some extent. China is in a similar position right now. But one thing that the US didn't do that well with is the US, the big countries that are aligned with the US are not necessarily mineral rich, and they're not necessarily oil rich.
Mhm.
And so they may have been the powers, right? Because Great Britain, Germany, these were big France, these were big powers prior to the United States. But and Canada does have some natural resources. I'm not saying that these countries have no natural resources.
Yeah.
But if you look at what BRICS is doing, they're leaning towards countries that can contribute something to the puzzle that needs to be contributed. If you look at China's specifically, but China and BRICS is sort of interest in Africa, for example. I know I brought that up before, but Africa contributes minerals in a way that the United States and the colonizing countries have been exploiting for years, but BRICS is offering them a seat at the table. BRICS is bringing in countries that are very oil rich, for example. And
Iran,
I know
Saudi Arabia,
exactly,
United Arab Emirates.
exactly. And the United States tried to make Saudi Arabia a partner, basically by being its military protector for decades,
Which
right?
we did,
But the Saudi Arabia has never been part of the West. Saudi Arabia has never been
well, that one, there's a lot involved into that. It's because the setup of, if you have to go back,
Oh yeah.
I detailed that in a book when I wrote, because the Saudi monarchy was always concerned about the religious establishment.
Yeah.
They're not gonna like that. They never liked Westerners there.
Oh, sure.
So they were walking a sort of a tightrope as to how far they go.
Right.
There were deals behind closed doors between the monarchy, the whole survival of the monarchy, because of the deal that did with the.
Right.
Let me say thank you to Rafael here.
Oh, hey. Hi,
because,
Rafael.
He gave us a super sticker here.
Love
Thank you very much,
that.
Rafael. And he wrote India size and population.
Yeah.
That is all, which is true.
And I feel, oh God, I feel for India, because India has smart people, man. Indian people are smart. They're not all of them, obviously, but a large percentage of the people are very smart. They're good people. They're kind. They're hardworking. The infrastructure is so bad, though, and I really feel that India could really be something extraordinary if they really put if they really put their mind to it, I really feel like India could pull itself up.
Well, till they replace Modi with someone who will be very more aligned with understanding what the global affairs are all about. Modi was not qualified to begin with. You can have nothing against Modi. For those from India watching this, nothing against your prime minister. It's the fact that he was not qualified to understand the dynamics of the global affairs to prepossession India for a better outcome. That's all it is. So when you embark on policies of nationalism, I ain't gonna cut it. Simple as that. But let's go back to our new member, Turkey. That is now applied.
Super
and Turkey
interesting.
just applied a week and a half ago.
Now
here is the question for you. Question for you guys. In your opinion, just yes or no, is Turkey trying to play both sides?
You know,
let me see your answer here in the chat box. Yes or no?
Yes.
Simple. And we will detail as we move forward. In your opinion, is the application or the membership of, and by the way, it's not official yet as far as being accepted, but the apply. Is this means that Turkey wants to play both sides? Yes or no? Let's see.
I'm curious. Yeah,
okay.
I have
Juan
my opinion.
KC, you say no. Hairless Ape, you say of course.
We got a lot of yeses.
Steve, you say yes. Casual Walk, you say yes. Marcian Dorcier, you say no.
KL
Paul,
says yes.
KL, yes. Hungry One, no. James L, no. UTU, no. Very interesting. And the whole idea, Zulfaqar Makhani, you say yes. And the point, guys, the reason we ask this question is to highlight, because the answer will give us two sides of the arguments. That's my point in all this. There are those who will say, well, Turkey will have to look after its own interest. I understand that.
For sure. I agree completely.
India does the same argument. China does the same argument. Russia does, and so forth. But will it be fair to say if really Turkey wanted to go that route, they should have leave NATO altogether?
But that's a dangerous path for Turkey to say. So first of all, Turkey's importance, okay? NATO's been like badgering on Turkey for a while, okay? But so Turkey has very interestingly played both sides in a couple of different ways. I'm gonna find a piece of information right now in my notes, and I'll come back to it. But it would be a huge departure for Turkey to be like, sorry, NATO, I'm going with BRICS. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That would be a giant departure for them.
Okay, but here's the question. Here's the question to challenge you on that. What is NATO contribute? What is Turkey contributing to NATO? You know what I mean? It's the idea we think about the big picture. I am not denying its strategic locations.
But
But you can't just do that. You can't just because you're geographically well positioned. You can be, because that you will lose credibility as to how you're going to think. Now that BRICS, it's almost like I feel like, well, maybe it's time to say BRICS is open to NATO members. Because that's what will be sort of the common message that will be sent.
That's what I'm trying to say, is that is the message that it would send. So number one, optics wise, that would look terrible. For a NATO, for a member of NATO to jump ship,
and they already lashed at Turkey,
and for a member of NATO to jump ship and join BRICS, the optics on that would be terrible. It would honestly be very crushing for NATO, I think, because the whole situation in Ukraine, like even here in the United States, one of the biggest platform pieces is how do we end the conflict in Ukraine? We just gave Ukraine another $8 billion. This is not popular. This war is not popular. The Israel conflict is also not popular. So I think that would start an exodus or a trend that the US and NATO would not appreciate.
Well, they're already saying, some analysts in the West saying that Turkey membership bid is more about playing both sides. That's what they're saying. Because now Ankara is moving away from the West. That's what they're saying. But it's not. You know, if you think about how long since Turkey applied to join the EU, you all know, guys, It's for decades. What did the EU told Turkey? They just give them a lip service. They've been giving them because they never view them as so. So to me, it becomes the issue on Turkey, not the EU. That it's almost like you got no dignity to take a stand and say, "Hell with you."
Well, so there are reports that Erdogan,
Rajab Erdogan,
and Vladimir Putin are, I mean, and we know that, right? We know that they're not like staunch enemies because Turkey and Hungary have both been sort of playing both sides this entire time.
Yeah.
But being members of NATO, what choice did they have? So if they actually said, hey, we're going to go inside with Russia based on their location, that would be a bad move for them.
Yeah. Well,
these aren't giant countries, right? Turkey and Hungary are not like huge countries with massive armies and tons of nuclear weapons to defend themselves. So, and they're in a very precarious position. The countries that are basically between Russia and the rest of Europe, I think are in a very challenging position. So I know that there's, we could definitely criticize them for like clearly not taking a stand either direction because they haven't. They've been playing both sides, right? But at the same time, looking at what's in the best interest for them, being enemies of NATO based on their location is a bad play for them. And although Russia is strong, I do not believe that Russia has the resources to protect Turkey. And I do not believe that Turkey has the resources to protect itself should NATO turn on Turkey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of moving parts as far as even for a country to leave NATO. I read somewhere, I wish I would have kept it, some procedures as to how, and it's challenging. It's challenging despite those countries are not. When you think about, for example, Cyprus, you think about Montenegro being a member. I mean, what do they have to contribute to?
They have beautiful beaches. Okay, I hear Montenegro is beautiful, and they have I think no yacht fuel tax.
Yeah, that's why.
In Montenegro, it's beautiful though, man. I would live in Montenegro. I think probably.
But it's just the idea to highlight to you as far as now with Turkey thinking in terms of joining BRICS, and this once again, this upcoming summit, as I said earlier, it's going to have to be focused on this issue of the integration. How you're going to move forward with for example, mainly the financial, because that is the number one objective, is to establish an alternative to SWIFT system.
Oh, sure.
Is it going to happen this time? I doubt it, because there's a lot of
it's
work.
coming.
It's coming one way or another. And especially when you have a candidate, Trump, issuing a statement like that's going to punish countries who's going to drop the dollar. Well, wait a minute, man. Those countries are sovereign states.
Well, and they're dropping the US dollar because it's not in their best interest to keep it.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is it's not like they're dumping it willy-nilly because they're like mad at somebody, right? I mean, to some extent, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not why they're dumping it. They're dumping it because it's not in their best interest to keep it. And it's very hard to say to somebody, so we want you to keep the dollar, even though it's not in your best interest to do that.
Yeah.
That's not good foreign policy, straight up. And I know that candidate former President Trump is saying that because that's the thing that everyone here in the United States is scared of. Anybody who knows that it's even a problem, which is a very small percentage of people. But if you know that it's a problem, you're concerned about de-dollarization, because what they've done is they've tied de-dollarization to the level of inflation. Like in people's minds, it isn't true, but in their minds, they've tied de-dollarization to how expensive everything is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're watching stores go bankrupt, like large corporations go bankrupt. Yeah. We're watching even fast food chains, even the Frito-Lays of the world, their profits are dropping because people cannot afford can't afford things anymore here. And so they've equated those two things. So the U.S. is terrified about losing dollar dominance.
Well, we created those
absolutely.
So we shouldn't blame anyone else.
But a fundamental problem that I think if we solved this one problem, everything else would solve itself. And that is being honest about where we are and what got us here. Because what got us here is the same or similar policies that are currently being embarked on by our politicians. They're not different.
To do that, you have to get rid of the whole government.
Well, to do that, you have to have a population that is willing to accept that sometimes things are not the way you want them to be, and find somebody who has an honest, logical, and pragmatic approach to solving those things. And stop blaming the other side. The right needs to stop blaming the left for all its problems. The left needs to stop blaming the right for all its problems and really come together and say, what is important to us? One thing would be to actually invest in the youth of our country. I think that would be a phenomenal step forward.
Well, one thing I want you to get about the Turkey stuff, it will be interesting to see Erdogan when he already announced that he's going to be attending the summit, same with some others, and it would be interesting I'll be watching what's going on from overseas. I wish I would have attended as an observer, outsider.
That'd be so cool.
That would be nice, but again, I am not an official.
Hey, if anybody has those connections, the email is show@geopoliticsandconflict.com. If anyone has the connections to get David to this summit as an observer, send us an email. You never know who's watching.
Well, I'll be happy to share my thoughts if you ever.
Yeah, I'm just letting anybody, if you have those connections, let us know. show@geopoliticsandconflict.com.
All right, guys. Well, we'll take some questions from you here. By the way, guys, remember tomorrow I'm going to be on the other channel on the geopolitical trends. I'm going to put the link for you guys here on the chat box. I will be talking about, did you know that the Mossad headquarters been targeted?
I know. That's
here's the link for tomorrow. I'll be talking about it.
This whole thing is and geopolitical trends. Just type it into the box. David goes live almost every day. You go live a lot on there.
Well, it's just the time while I have time, because
I know
travel, it won't be enough time.
And we will have some more content coming out on this channel,
guys. We'll have some recorded stuff, guys. We're gonna be recording. Some of them pertain to BRICS, because there are some other dimensions regarding BRICS you need to understand the upcoming summit. To me, in my opinion, literally this upcoming summit, it's where the trajectory changes.
It's interesting.
That's how I feel.
To me, I feel like the trajectory changed when they started actually putting into practice. So, we have Enbridge, and then we have whatever the BRICS unit, if that's accurate, whether it's the BRICS unit or whatever it is, into practice. The moment they really started putting active effort that direction, and in my opinion, the moment they got the Saudis on board, that was a big shift in this direction. Okay,
that's true. All right, let's take a
you got Army with Harmony right here. Do you want to take this one?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Let me see.
Question. First of all, it's good to see you. Can there be a so-called straw that breaks the camel's back and cause the dollar to fall like the Twin Towers? And what would civil war do to that, basically?
I don't know about the first part. This is more a financial question than I won't be able to answer something like this, because what will be the straw that will break the camel's back from a financial perspective? It's hard to tell. At least as an observer, I would say once you don't see the transactions in oil in the dollar completely around the world, that would be to me.
So I'm going to say that it already happened.
Yeah.
And I think it was two straws.
Yeah.
The first was, you say this all the time, when the US sanctioned Russia.
Yeah.
And started this whole thing, right? When that happened, it somehow overextended the US. Economists that are much more educated than me understand this better, okay?
Yeah.
But there was some global shift that happened when the Ukraine situation happened. I also think the economic policies that happened during COVID I think destroyed the US economy.
Economy.
Flat out. And some very intelligent economists at the time were saying that. They said that if you lock down, you are going to destroy the US economy. And these are economists, okay? This is not me.
Yeah.
And, you can have whatever other reasons for shutting down the economy. You can have whatever other reasons those were. Number one, it was the largest wealth transfer in history. Just, putting that in there. But so many wise economists said this is going to be the end of the US if you do this. And then lo and behold, what did we have? It also hurt China, though. I will say the extreme lockdowns in China did certainly not help their economy.
Yeah.
And then the other is when oil transactions started happening in other currency than the US dollar. I actually think there was a third straw. Now that we're talking about straws, taking the US dollar off the gold standard, I think was the fundamental straw. Because at that point, it made it a fiat currency.
Yeah.
And all fiat currencies fail. Every single one.
Even though the government at that time said it will be temporary.
I know they did.
But they lied.
They did.
lied.
You absolutely did. You are absolutely right, David. They said it would be temporary.
Yeah.
But how they with no plan to get it back on, right? They were like, it's temporary, but we don't have a plan to fix it, but it's temporary. So I think fundamentally that's what killed the US dollar. And that was before I was born.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Let's take the next question from Francis Tango. Do you have to leave NATO if you want to join BRICS?
That's a great question.
Good question, Francis. But no, it's not. It's just the optics of it. That's why I said earlier, is now BRICS open to NATO? Because who's going to be? What if Hungary wants to join BRICS next?
Yeah.
What if even Poland? Did you know that the Polish president was in China and he was some talks about some economic aspect?
Yeah.
Maybe he's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Even the President Duda kind of didn't embark on the right policy, but beside the point.
Yeah.
No, they don't have to leave NATO, except that it's going to be questionable. That membership is going to be questionable. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like India now in Quad.
Yeah.
India is in Quad, but also India is in BRICS. So you kind of just question. That's the way I see it.
Well, and you know what? It might put in the forefront sort of what's happening in the background already. It might just make it official.
Yeah. Here is a statement. This is just a statement from Hong Kong. Elizabeth, both the left and the right blames China and Russia for the problems in America rather than their own incompetence.
Absolutely. Spot on.
Because, you're right. He's right.
Absolutely. Right. Because if there is somebody else, right? If there's somebody outside of us, we never have to look inside for our problems. Yeah. And the United States, almost all, I'm not going to say all, but almost all of our problems are our own, right? Yeah. Our internal problems.
Just we don't wanna,
even if it's external corruption, right? Even if it's that China is really heavily influencing the US, like that's a talking point, right? Like China is taking all this stuff from the US. Who did that?
Who did that one? That's true.
The US government did that, not China. China is not responsible for the fact that US really wanted their investment. And so they sold us out, or cheap labor. So they sold us out. Like China's not responsible for that. The United States is. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's always a distraction. It's like a maze of distraction. It's China's fault. It's Russia's fault. It's the right's fault. It's the left's fault. It's this person's fault. It's this person's fault, without ever having to look inside. Yeah. Because even on a human level, where are most of your problems coming from? They're not coming from the outside. If you're being honest, they're coming from the inside. So I agree completely.
Well, that's why sometimes when people sit silently, they get nervous. Silence is a killer. I tell you this because silence will force you to think inward. And the voice inside you that telling you need to deal with A and B and C, you don't want to hear that. Yeah. Not all of us, of course. Some do have that strong will to face that. Others don't. So when they don't, what's left is to shift the blame to others.
To somebody else.
America is no different. When I say America, I'm referring to the government. The average citizen outside, like I always say, he or she is worrying about, do I have dinner tonight or not? They're not going to understand those dynamics of the issues.
And more than that, like, David, have you watched the news recently?
I don't. That's one
Oh
thing.
my God.
I don't watch the news here in the
I
US.
don't either.
Yeah.
But sometimes you walk into like a store or something.
And, the TV
and I was in an airport yesterday.
Yeah.
And there's like news everywhere. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's so I was on a plane, right? And they have the screens in the back of whatever.
Yeah.
And somebody in front of me had the news on. And it was like horrible headline after horrible headline after horrible headline.
Yeah.
And it was like, you couldn't go to school, you couldn't go to the mall, you couldn't go anywhere because there was like this terrible thing that happened. I'm not going to say exactly what the headlines were, but it was like terrible thing after terrible thing. And then you wonder why people are scared all the time.
Yeah.
You wonder why people are distracted all the time.
It's by design. So don't be fooled, guys.
Yeah.
Be aware. Learn the knowledge. Acquire the knowledge, rather, not learn it. Acquire it. This way, you reach your own conclusion in thinking in terms of issues, whatever that might be. And if there is something that is either perplexing you, whatever, seek help by asking questions.
Yeah.
This is one thing we do in this channel. We do the same on the other channel. That was the whole reason for why we decided to create even 2 more channels for that. And to ensure that you guys acquire the knowledge needed.
Yeah.
It's because we know, we live here, we understand how the system works and so forth. And when the decision was made to go YouTube, I mean, if you asked me 10 years ago, create a YouTube channel, I'll tell you, you must be smoking weeds. So.
The way you say that is hilarious.
Well, it's just kind of like,
I love it.
Because someone asked me 10 years ago, whatever that was.
Yeah.
Oh, David, why don't you have a YouTube channel? I'll see, what is that?
Yeah.
I was traveling around a lot at the time, and I was like, what's that? Oh, you don't? I said, no, I don't. Because I don't have time for that.
You never know where life
that's
takes
true.
you.
And I am glad, I am so happy that it worked out that way. So, I mean, to me now, being with the community,
absolutely,
that to me is one of the things of meaning in life.
It is.
I do find the meaning in life with the community.
I'm really glad you do.
And I mean it when I say this, guys. You know me. I don't sugarcoat things, and I don't say things to be Mr. Nice.
It's true.
I will lash out at you if you cross the line.
I think you can see that in the comments sometimes. Well, for sure, true.
Yeah, you got some idiots,
I know. I know.
We have a wonderful community, and sometimes I do see that even the members of the community, they get on the whomever puts some, because the stupidity of the
I know.
If you don't have anything useful to add, keep your mouth shut.
I agree.
Simple as that. To me, it's just. But I forgive.
Yes,
I forgive.
of course. Actually, speaking of community, we've been talking about having sort of a prayer or a meditation session for peace.
I don't do prayers.
Well, I don't mean prayer in the sense, like, absolutely not religious in any sense.
Yeah.
To me, a prayer is just a positive intention for peace for the world.
Well, I've been
so like maybe doing like a session like that.
We're gonna be coming up with a strategy for this, especially after I get back from overseas trip, and we're thinking about creating some sort of we have a community already, but we want to focus that on one specific aspect, and that aspect is how to promote peace. Now you can call it a movement, you can call it whatever term you want to use, and we're just thinking now about ideas of how to go and establish this. And we want you to be part of that. This is not about us talking, because we want your ideas into this community conversation regarding peace. Because don't ever underestimate your abilities and your intelligence and your talents. You have something to add to the conversation, one way or another. So it just matters for us now. We are thinking about how we're going to go about it, how we establish it. We're going to be inviting some other guests to be part of that conversation. But this conversation is not about us talking. Once again, it's about you being part of this, all of us. And because sometimes we are not officials, we are not in the government, but we do still have a say into how we can influence the trajectory of events, one way or another. So I do speaking. And usually anytime I get a chance to address that, I will address it. So usually whatever you speak, they will be okay with something like that, because hey, you asked me to speak at your event, I'll be happy to do it. I'll talk to you about geopolitics and all that. But there is also a much bigger issue that you need to be aware of, called peace, because of where we're seeing things are headed. So we're thinking about it. We are open to your ideas, of course, and we will announce it further as
we'll announce it further. And if you guys have ideas, please put it in there's a community tab on our YouTube channel. And so if you guys don't know it, come check, because YouTube is unliking stuff for us. It's unsubscribing stuff. It's not showing you guys our content. So please just keep checking back, because that's very frustrating. I don't know. I don't know.
I'm kind of like thinking in terms of the decency in a human being. So you kind of like, you start to think, is why would you hold this grudge against this channel or that channel, whatever? You might not like what they're saying, but not to the point of shutting them down. What for? What have they done to you?
But Mark Zuckerberg literally said what's happening in his letter from Meta. He literally said that he was forced by the government to do these things.
Well, then he could have taken a stand.
I think he did by saying, and I'm absolutely not going to vouch for Mark Zuckerberg, or Facebook, but I will say that he came out and said it. And if you guys have not read the Meta letter, it's worth reading, because all of the things that were conspiracy before he basically says, no, this is what happened. So please go read the Meta letter. But back to peace really quickly. I will put it there. And if you guys are interested in sort of joining that, we do have a bigger say than I think we do. So we want to make sure you guys are involved too.
All right, guys. Once again, remember, join me tomorrow on the geopolitical trends for conversation about Mossad.
Ooh.
Well, only of what I can say.
Yeah, I know.
Unfortunately, I can't.
No,
I'm still bound by the law.
Of course, that's very important to keep that.
But anyway, I'll be addressing that tomorrow at 12:15 on the other channel. So
yeah,
as always, guys, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time. Bye bye.